Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. Today I have Maria Franzoni. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Maria?
Well done. Well, if you're English, yes, Maria Franzoni. For Italian, it's Maria Franzoni.
Okay, I was not going to attempt that. So do you speak fluent Italian then?
I do. Would you like to do the chat in Italian?
No, absolutely not, because I can order wine and a
that's good.
And that's about it.
That's important.
Oh dear. Right, you are the founder of the Speaking Business Academy, and you are the former owner of the International Speaker Bureau.
Well, let's be careful because it wasn't called I'm a former International Speaker Bureau owner. Let's do it that way, because I think there is a bureau called the International Speaker Bureau, and I'd love to say that I used to own it, but they might have a problem with that.
I'm with you. Okay, great. So what I do know is that you spent many years really successfully booking some huge names to conferences, gigs, all kinds of things all over the world. How did you get into that business?
You know, it was totally by accident. And actually, yes, I did book some big names, but I also booked some unknown names. I like to say that I booked the who's who and the who's that of the speaking world, because you work with a huge range. Totally by accident. I had just come out of a different job and I wanted to do something different. I had been working with some very senior and intelligent people, and I wanted to continue to do that. And there was a very cryptic advert that said, if you can negotiate at senior level, and having been a management consultant sitting opposite CEOs and boards and telling them what was wrong with their business, I like telling people what to do, by the way. You'll get that the gist.
A woman after my own heart.
Yes, good. I'm glad we're on the same page there. So it was a cryptic advert that said, you know, can you negotiate at senior level? Are you not phased? Are you keen to keep learning, et cetera, et cetera? And I thought, well, I'll go and find out. And I had never heard of speaker bureaus until I went for that interview. And that was with a chap called Alex Krywald, no longer with us, sadly, founder of CSA Celebrity Speakers in Burnham. They're still going, which is great. And I met him and I fell in love with the job description. I thought, this sounds amazing.
Wow, fabulous. Okay, and you've not looked back. So who's the most famous person you booked?
It depends, I suppose, how you look at it, in how you measure fame. But I think probably the one that stood out for me, because when I joined the bureau, Alex said to me, who would you like most to meet? Who would you most like to meet that's on our roster? Wow. And my earliest memory of world events was sitting at home with my parents, watching the moon landing, being allowed to stay up and see it.
Yeah.
And I remember Neil Armstrong saying those famous words, you know, one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. And I said, I want to meet Neil Armstrong. And I got to meet him and work with him. So I suppose for me, it was Neil, and the fact that we became, you know, quite good friends. We'd have dinner on a regular basis. So I loved meeting and working with Neil Armstrong.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I love that. What's he like?
Well, sadly, he's no longer with us, but he was wonderful. So like me, he's a Leo, or was a Leo. Oh. He loved little dogs. He had a little Shih Tzu, so he had a lot of little dogs. Incredibly bright, one of the brightest people, curious, so curious. So whenever I met him, whatever city we'd be in, he'd want to know all the history. He would want to know about everything. And I felt a little bit ignorant and embarrassed at times that I didn't know the questions he was asking. Because I thought, why am I not asking those questions? And what he did when he spoke, he put so much tailoring and effort and work into every single speech. He really cared. So I had a lot of time for Neil. Wonderful man.
God, he sounds amazing. He sounds amazing. I am just selecting my next puppy, and I already have a dog. Do you have a dog?
We've got a rescue dog currently. I lost my little chap who lived to 16. I lost him last year. I still miss him. I'm not ready to replace him yet, but we rescued a doggie who's a boingy, bouncy, crazy Labradoodle and brings so much joy and laughter. What's your puppy going to be?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to decide. So at the moment, I have a cross between a Havanese and a Tibetan Terrier.
Lovely.
I would like a purebred Tibetan. Husband's not that keen. So I'm currently investigating cute, fluffy things. So, yeah.
Have a look at Cotton de Tulier. My little boy was a Cotton de Tulier. He was fabulous.
Do you know, I have literally just looked at that breed. Literally, I'd never heard of it before, and I've literally just looked at it and went, "What's that? That's so bizarre." And a bolognese.
Bolognese, yeah. They're all hypoallergenic, all very similar. We've gone on to dog breeds. How did we do that?
We need to come back. We need to come back. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Okay, and I also want to ask, in terms of the unknowns, you know, the who's that, whose career do you think you had helped to boost, launch, promote, that you know, you might not have heard of had it not been for you spotting them?
Oh, goodness gracious. That's a difficult one. But that's a difficult one. I've never thought about that one. I'll tell you who I very much got involved with working with, and he spotted himself, I suppose, if you like, and he came after me to help him. And initially, I didn't get it, and we sort of had to establish what that positioning was and who he was. Somebody I've done a lot of work with is Jamil Qureshi, and I hope he agrees that I've helped him get onto the international stage and got onto lots of other bureaus. The advantage he had was he's a great speaker already. So there's lots of speakers that I've worked with who probably were unknown, and certainly now a lot of the speakers that I'm working with now that were unknown. And it's not that difficult to become visible, but you just need to know what you're doing. It's a very good question. I'm going to go back and make a list afterwards, because you've caught me on the hop there with that one. I probably could do a list.
I like to do that. Okay, so I've read some of your background. You were flying high 2019, 2020. I read that your year was fully booked out. You were about to do an absolute stonking year. What were you thinking at that point in terms of your business and where you were going, and what were you doing?
So we actually had a party at the beginning of January 2020, and we invited speakers and colleagues to celebrate the fact that 2020 was going to be the best year ever. That was in January. How little did I know? So do not ask me to predict the future, because clearly I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to, I'm not a futurist. So we were very positive. I had just recruited somebody new who just started. So I had a new sales consultant who obviously costed me money, and I was training and developing. So I had somebody new who'd started with me. I'd taken on somebody not that long before. So I was recruited up, ready for a bumper year. And I think we had about £1 million worth of forward bookings in January for the year. It was good. It was looking good. So we were very positive. I was planning a nice holiday. I was planning to take the whole team away if the year had gone the way it was supposed to go. It didn't.
Hindsight's such a wonderful thing, isn't it? It really is. Now, when did that start to unravel? When were the first signs that you saw that you thought, oh, hang on a minute?
February. It was early for us. It was earlier than most. So it was February for us, because we had clients in Asia. And of course, Asia was the first area to really be hit. And I had a big client, I should say, who had an event organized in Singapore. And they had people flying in from all over the world to attend. I think they had 600 people attending, participants, and we'd booked all of their speakers. So we had several speakers booked. They'd paid us, and I got a call from my contact who said, the president of the company wants to speak with you. And I never really dealt with the president. I always used to deal with my contact, who was next level down, and she was my contact for years and years, and we always worked together on the conference. And I thought, well, this is weird. And he got on the phone and he said, Maria, I'm holding in my hand a letter from the Singapore government telling me that I am not allowed to bring my people into the country. They've closed their borders. So I want to invoke force majeure. And I have to tell you that before that point, we hadn't even had force majeure in our contracts, because in all the things that had happened, I'd never had to even think about it. So suddenly it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. So that was the first one that hit us. And then bit by bit, it was like, like dominoes falling.
Yeah.
One by one.
Yeah. Where were you in your head at that?
Well, at that point, I thought, oh, it's just going to be Asia, like SARS in 2002, 2003. It's going to be just Asia. Those are the events that will be affected. I was quite calm at that point. I thought it'll be okay.
Okay.
And I was saying to everybody, it'll be okay. It's just Asia. We'll be all right. It's not going to come over here like it didn't last time. is what I was thinking. Again, how wrong was I?
You're talking to the woman who thought internet shopping would never take off. So, do you know, it's
Oh,
like,
goodness.
who's ever going to buy shoes off the internet? What's that about? You know, we can be very, yeah, exactly. We can be so wrong about so many things. Oh dear. Okay, so you I think the famous word is pivoted. I hate that word. To me, it's like, oh my God, this is all fallen apart. What am I going to do now? When was that point for you?
That was a fair bit later, actually, because as everything started to unravel, so March was a very bad month, both personally and professionally. We lost he would have been my father-in-law now, because I've just recently got married. He was one of the first casualties of COVID. He was one of those who was named on the news. So that was really, really difficult. And my family in Italy come from the Brescia area, which is next door to Bergamo, which was the epicenter of what was going on. So we were getting reports from the family. So that was really bad. And so my man had to go off to the north of the UK to deal with father-in-law. I was trying to deal with the business. I then had an accident at home where I hurt my foot, couldn't walk for 2 weeks, and yet I was trying to manage all this. So again, we were having renegotiations, we were having postponements. It was all going quite badly. And it was in the June that things changed. And things changed in the June because obviously we were just dealing with what was happening. But by that point, we'd had a lot of speakers coming to us saying, our business has stopped. What are we going to do? Can you help us? And it was my colleagues, it was Mary Tilson, Audrey and Sean said, we can do something. We can do something here. We can help them. And so in the June, we started working full-time with speakers on their side. So I split the bureau in two. Half my team were dealing with postponements, new inquiries, booking virtual events, dealing with all of that side. And I removed myself from it because I found it too stressful personally. And I started working with the speakers. And we quickly discovered that what we knew in terms of growing a business from the speaker bureau world applied very much to what was happening, and we could apply it to speakers and we could help them, because the way we looked at speaking and speakers, it wasn't about the speech, it was about delivering the expertise, it was about delivering the solution. So we simply had to teach speakers to think that way, not to think about a keynote speech or a conference speech, but to think about, okay, what's the problem you're solving? How does that relate now to what's going on? How can you help companies that are struggling either because everything's stopped or because they are totally overwhelmed with way too much work? So we had both going on.
Right.
And so we started doing that full time in the June, half of us, and it just had its own momentum. It just took off.
Fabulous. So there's clearly a need for this. Do you think there'd always been a need? It's just
I think there probably always was a need for speakers to have an understanding of how to do the business side. There's always been a need for that, because most speakers are brilliant at what they do, but they hope somebody else will do the selling and the marketing for them, if we're honest about it, right? Most people would rather not have to do the selling side. And what certainly galvanized everybody was the fact that actually I've got no business, and so they had the time to invest. So that was what was different. They had the time to invest, and we were able then to do quite intense programs that were group programs. So we were doing group programs with small groups, and we were asking them to join us on a Friday for a session, and on a Wednesday to tell us what they'd done. And we did that 6, 8 weeks, I think it was 8 weeks actually for each group. And we just kept bringing in new groups. And we could do that because they didn't have anywhere else to be.
Yeah. And how's that metamorphosized now? How do you handle?
It's changed a lot, because now that business started coming back in 2021. So a lot of the groups that we had formed were then, people were not able to attend a session because suddenly they had a briefing call or they had a client wanted to meet them. So they were getting very disrupted. So instead of doing the 8 weeks. I think we finished it in the March 2021, doing the 8-week programs. We started doing individual days on different topics. And then bit by bit, again, we changed that too and started working one-to-one. And many people will say, oh, you shouldn't trade time for money. I know there's all these experts saying that. But from our point of view, it was fine, because we're not at that stage where we're looking to scale and create a global empire. We want to make a huge impact for a number of people where we can really change their lives, rather than have a small impact on hundreds and thousands of people. I'd rather help 1,000 people over the next however many years I do this, and have them help them pay off their mortgage, have a business of their own, have real success, to achieve what they want to achieve. So we don't need to scale, which is a nice place to be, because we've done the scaling. We did that before in the last business. Do you know what I mean?
It's a really nice place to be. And you know, full confession time, you're helping Nick, my brother, who I'm in business with, and he's really excited about the work that you're doing with him. And I'm biased. I think he's a great speaker. I think he's very talented, and yeah, I think he can go off and do good things across the world. Definitely.
He's fabulous. He's fabulous. We need to stick a little note in the show notes for anybody who's looking for a really talented speaker. And he's got such a great personality as well.
Yeah.
Is that a family thing?
Yeah, we've got a very dark sense of humor. I was trying to work out last year whether that was because we're from Manchester, or whether that we have Jewish heritage. And I was listening to a comedian, and the comedian happened to be Jewish. I can't remember who it was, and he said, you know, a lot of Jewish people have a very dark sense of humor, and he put it down to the fact that they've been persecuted forever, and you have to have humor to get through things. And I thought, you know what, our whole family has a very black viewpoint on life, and I think it comes from that, and I think that's where his humor comes from. Definitely.
He's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Okay, so what happens, we've got somebody listening to this and thinking, well, I'd quite like to be a speaker one day, I've got ambitions to do that. Where do they start?
Okay, so where I like people to start, I don't want them to start with their passion or their topic, and that probably goes against what a lot of people say, but I'd rather they started with the market. What is it that's needed? And it depends, you know, whether we're talking, the market I know is obviously the corporate and the business, and, you know, the big organization market, and the conference and event market. So, you know, what is it that they need? What are they looking for? Where's the gap? Where do I fit in that? What can I solve? So I always start with the market. If you want to get paid as a speaker, if your ambition is not about getting paid, and it's about spreading a message or spreading an idea or making an impact unpaid, then you can follow your passion, you can follow your topic, you can do it very differently. But so for me, it's who's gonna pay you, who's going to listen to you, what is it that they want, what is it that they need, and why are you credible to deliver it?
That's really interesting. That's a completely different way of looking at it than I thought you were going to say. So I know somebody who's gone through the train to do a TEDx talk process, and it was exactly the opposite. It was use your passion, use your background, definitely, but then that's not paid, is it? You do that for the kudos and for the, oh, I've done a TEDx. Yeah.
And a lot of TEDs and a lot of TEDx talks that speakers have done are not necessarily on the topic that they end up then getting booked for, but it's a very good platform. And lots of the bookers that I used to work with would look at speakers on TEDx and TED and choose them based on the TED talk. So it's actually a very good thing to do. And normally, and not in every case, because I've seen a few dodgy ones, but normally the quality of the recording is usually very high.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I know Nick's had to put a show reel together based on one of his conference speeches, and you've got to have some material, haven't you, to put out there and share with people. Again, if you're starting out, how do you get off the ground with that?
Get off the ground with the video, or get off the ground with speaking?
Yeah, the sort of, if you're starting from scratch and this is your ambition, is it literally just recording something in front of phone? What do you do?
No, it's got to be high quality. So again, going back on, and it depends on the market. So for example, if you decide the market is schools don't need video because the people booking you in schools haven't got time to watch a video. So it depends on the market, and it depends what fee you're looking for, and it depends what the outcome is that you're going to deliver. But there's a long way before you do the video piece, really. And I think sometimes people start the video piece too soon. If you don't know who your market is and who your target audience is, how do you create a video for them? How do you talk to them? How do you create your website content? How do you create your bio? How do you create your topics if you don't know who you're talking to? So it's very much who are you talking to and what do you want them to do when they watch that video?
I mean, this is just like creating your own mini business.
It is a business. That's why we call it Speaking Business Academy.
Well, the clue's in the title. Silly me, I should have spotted that straight away. It is. So the reason this is fascinating because I find this, we train coaches and consultants, okay? And I find this with them is that they have to get to a point where they understand that they are the business, they are the product and the service. And actually they have to work out what market, exactly as you say, that they want to serve and who's going to pay for it, who's got the money, and how they're going to position that. And I think some people want a magic wand and there isn't one. I think it's quite an iterative process. Are there any sort of videos or books you'll direct people to help them with that process?
I'm going to be very cheeky and direct them to my website, which is mariafranzoni.me, and go to the free resources section. And there's several how-to guides that we find helpful. And one of them, I'm trying to remember what it's called now, but I think it's How to Get Booked and Paid to Speak. I think it's called that. And we looked at 4,500 speakers on the Bureau roster in 2019. So it was at the height of the market, and the market's back, by the way. It's back, and it's stronger than ever because you've got all the bookings, the business back, plus virtual on top. So we looked at 4,500 speakers on the roster, and we looked at who was getting booked, who got 80% of the bookings out of that 4,500, and why. What do they have in common? So that's covered in that document as to what have they got in common that they're getting booked. And it's interesting because you think, oh, it must be the most famous, the most known. It's not.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, I think that's a really good resource. Thanks very much for that. And when we do the write-up for this, for the podcast, there will be links to that, so people will be able to find that out. Okay. So is it just you? What size of team do you have for your business?
Okay, so we're quite small. There's myself and there's Mary Tilson. So Mary, it's called Speaking Business. Mary teaches the speaking, I teach the business side. So Mary used to work with me in my speaker bureau, working with speakers. If they had a new speech to work on, she would help them. If they needed to take it to the next level, she'd help them. If they had a speech and needed to create a program or a masterclass or a workshop. So she does the content piece there, and also helps them to really scope a brief really well so that anything that's created delivers on the objective that the client has and that the audience has, because that's so important, right? So there's myself and Mary doing the training. And then I'm supported by two of my team, again, who were from the Bureau. Audrey, who was in charge of all of my money management, and she still is, thank goodness. And I've also got Sian, who basically just keeps everybody organized and everything ticking over. And she could run the business with her hands tied behind her back if I'm not around, which is great. So I've got a much smaller team than I used to have, and it's all female. I don't know if that's good or bad. Girl power.
Well, our business is me and my brother, and Alison supports me. But, Nick doesn't want to make any decisions, so I'm in charge. He knows that, and that's fine. It works beautifully. Yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. So you're not going to scale it, which is fine. I totally get that. That's really nice. Where will it end up, do you think? Because this sounds like it keeps evolving. Where do you see it
Yeah.
going?
We're always going to react to what the clients want, what the speakers need and what they want. And it's interesting because I create new services based on what somebody will say. Oh, by the way, you know, this, I need this and I've got that problem. Oh, great. I'll create that service. I can do that. So it was constant. We're always going to be listening to what speakers need and what they want. And how it evolves, we have to keep up with the market. So I have to keep up with the market. Yesterday, I had lunch with one of my former Speaker Bureau colleagues because I need to keep up with what's going on. So I'm working with Speaker bureaus as well as with speakers, because the important thing is what is going on in the market internationally. And so it'll evolve and react based on that.
Right.
And I'm not going to risk predicting it because I've been so wrong in the past. At the moment, the market is hot, it's going well. And it even though we're facing recession and talking ourselves into recession here in the UK, whenever we had a recession in the past, the speaking experts who can help businesses continue to do well.
Right, that's really interesting. And you said there's in person and there's virtual on top. What's the split roughly?
I don't have any, there's no tracking of those figures. And if you ask each bureau, they're all going to say different things. But what's happened is, we first of all thought, oh, when everything comes back to in person, companies will drop virtual. But there's a lot of companies that have continued to do that because it allows them to very quickly and very cheaply bring their entire team together, and they can plan events. There was a company that I was working with during COVID who used to do one event a year, and then in COVID did 47 virtual events. So there are some who've just absolutely embraced it, because the cost of those 47, you could have 47 individual speakers. It still costs less than flying everybody in, hiring a venue, having everybody away from their work. The cost of running a conference is huge. So a lot of people are still doing that. They're doing, I don't have numbers. I wish somebody out there would do a survey. There's very little information on the market, real figures, which is really sad.
Yeah,
because it's quite complex. It's a complex market.
It does sound like it's not a very straightforward business model at all, is it?
No, it's not. And that's partly the problem for speakers when they were going into it, or people coming into it, is that it's incredibly fragmented. It's very complex. There's all sorts of different types of events. There's events where clients don't pay their speakers. There's events where they do. There's events where speakers pay to speak. So there's so much variety, and there's events for business, there's events that are personal development events, there's public events, there's ticketed events, there's sponsored events. It's quite a mix.
I thought it was just going to be very straightforward. Somebody needs a speaker, you book them, they get paid, that's it. Right, okay, this has opened up a whole new world to me. You come across, Maria, as a very creative person who thinks on their feet very quickly. Do you think that's one of the reasons you've been so successful at this?
It could be, because certainly when you're coming up with ideas, so when I was in the bureau coming up with ideas, I used to like thinking creatively and come up with different people, because you don't want to keep having, clients don't want the same person again and again and again. They want different people. I'm naturally a good problem solver, and that could well be down to the creativity. I do get a lot of ideas. I have to reject them, otherwise you get sidetracked. I have to put the blinkers on and stay focused. The older I've got, the more creative I've got, which is terrible. I need to stay focused, because focus is the reason you're successful in reality. And it's the reason why I chose between, I could have carried on running my bureau and carried on running the training company. And I thought, no, I need to make a choice. I need to choose and focus, especially as it's two different markets. The bureau B2B, and the training company B2C. It's very different. The messaging's different. And I thought, if I'd been 20 years younger, I probably would have done both. But in reality, I know I want to focus, specialize, and go deep in one area. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, you did. And it seems like you're having a lot of fun whilst you're doing it.
I love it. There's so much stuff in this. It's not a good word, stuff, but there's so much in this particular business that is really positive, that I didn't realize how stressed I was running a bureau until I changed.
Right.
And the stress of the bureau, and I was talking about this to my former colleague actually at lunch yesterday, and I said, what I don't miss is that you have to be on 24/7 because you're working internationally. And as a bureau, if you don't respond, or as a bureau consultant or someone selling to bureaus, if you don't, and anybody listening who works in a bureau will understand this, if you don't respond immediately, that person who wants to book will go to the next person. You are a bit of a commodity as a bureau. Unless you've got a great relationship with your client, then they will come back to you again and again. But when it's somebody new testing you out, they will go to 4 or 5 different bureaus. And so you've got to be really quick. You've got to get it right. You've got to talk to them as fast as possible. So I don't miss being on all the time. Now, especially working one-to-one, I have a calendar and people book when I'm available. I'm fully booked for the next 4 weeks. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing they can do about it. I can just sit back and relax. And I know I've got my planned diary for the next 4 weeks. Lovely, bliss.
That is lovely. That is really nice. If your business had a personality or a character, how would you describe it?
Oh my goodness, you do ask me some questions about I've never thought about if it had a personality. I think it would be a cotton de Tulare, happy clown doggy.
I love that.
Fluffy, but with a bit of big personality, small and fluffy, huge personality, who likes to play.
That's why I love these dogs, because they are small, but they think they've got massive personalities, don't they?
And our business is small, but we have a massive personality, so it works, right?
Yeah,
and we're cute, we're hairy.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. You grow to look like your dog. No, I definitely choose dogs with fluffy hair because it makes me feel better about my fluffy hair, without a shadow of a doubt. That's amazing. Thank you, Maria, so much. I really appreciate that. I know you're incredibly busy, and congratulations on your recent nuptials. I'm sure it's lovely. Were you back in Italy?
No, we got married here in the UK, and we actually even honeymooned in the UK. So we kept it all quite local, and we were lucky with the weather, thank goodness. So it was, and I'm still married 13 days later. So that's good, right?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Amazing. Thank you so much.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.